Hey everybody, welcome. I'm Allie. I'm going to be the one talking to you today. I work all day, every day on AWS Amplify. I lead developer advocacy, growth, developer education, and the docs. So if you have feedback on any of those areas, please let me know, or the product in general. I have been on this team for about 3.5 years, so I've gotten to see a lot of growth in Amplify over the years. And fun fact, this is my first talk in person back from maternity leave, so I am a little bit rusty. Okay, but I want to get to know all of you. So first, if you can go to this link and enter in this code, I'll give you about 45 to 60 seconds to talk about what role you are in. Ooh, there we go. Here's some answers. A lot of you are full stack developers. That's what I did as a career before becoming a developer advocate as well. I was a full stack software engineer using mostly Python and JavaScript. So I definitely relate to you all there. And a lot of front-end developers as well, and some mobile folks and some cloud folks too, and other. That's fair. Okay, I have another question for you while we're doing a pop quiz here. What is your experience level with AWS Amplify? Have you used it before, or are you newer to it? Oh, cool. Here we go. That was faster than 10 seconds. I love it. A lot of folks are brand new or learning it, and then some folks are using it in production. So that's really exciting to see. We'll start at the beginning then and talk a little bit about what Amplify is. Then we'll go into a bunch of the brand new features that we've launched over the second half of this year, mostly in the last week or so. Okay, so our agenda. Amplify follows this life cycle of develop, ship, and then extend. So we'll talk about all of those parts of the life cycle today. So development, we're going to talk about the second generation of Amplify, which we just announced. We're going to talk a little bit about how you can use generative AI to build Amplify apps faster. We'll talk about the JavaScript v6 library, which I'm really excited about as well. Then once we're done developing, we're going to ship. So we're going to talk about our front-end hosting and some launches that we've had there around server-side rendering. Then we're going to talk about how you go beyond Amplify and use some of these additional features. So AWS CDK, how that works with Amplify, and also we're going to talk a little bit about some database choices that you can make now with Amplify as well. So again, 3 parts of the life cycle that Amplify helps out with. First off, develop. So this is a big one. Amplify helps to build full stack apps. It's a modular collection of capabilities. So you can add in things like data, authentication, authorization, storage to build what you need for your end customers. And it helps to make this quicker and easier than using all these services alone. Then you can also ship with it. So you can redeploy your app on every Git push, and then scale serverlessly with the full power of AWS. Everything under the hood is a full, complete AWS service deployed in your AWS account. So it's not like you're going to have to migrate off of it once you get to 1 million users or something along those lines. And all these building blocks you can use either all together. They work really great there. But you can also use them independently. So if you just want to connect to your S3 bucket and build out a UI for it, you can do that with Amplify. If you just want to host your front-end app, you can do that with Amplify. Or you can build out your full stack application with it as well. So a little bit of a diagram of what this might look like. First, you have your front-end hosting, and Amplify can help with that. Then you have your app's front end. So you might build that with Vue or Next.js or React. Or if you are a mobile developer, you might use Android or Flutter or iOS. So you build that out like normal. Then you can use Amplify to be that middle layer between your front end and your back end. So you can use our pre-built UI components for things like building authentication flows. You can use the libraries to, for example, make GraphQL calls to your cloud backend. You can also use Figma to code. So if you want to go from a design to code really quickly with React, you can use Amplify for that as well. And then there's the backend layer. So auth, data, storage are the biggest categories. There are other ones too, like geo and predictions. But I think every app has the auth, data, and storage, so I'll spend a lot of time talking about those ones. And behind the scenes, again, those use services like Amazon S3, DynamoDB, and Amazon Cognito. There are two ways to build app backends with Amplify. The first is visually through our console called Studio, so you can build out data in auth using that, and storage as well. And then there's also a command line interface that you can use if you're more comfortable with that. And in one application, it might look something like this, where you have a login form built with the UI components. Then the authentication on the back end is enabled via the Amplify Studio. Then behind the scenes, you don't have to interact with this part directly, but it will build out an Amazon Cognito user pool for you. Then you might have data displayed to your users, and you can use the Amplify libraries to do that. You can enable it via the CLI, and then behind the scenes, your data will be using Amazon DynamoDB. Then for images, you can also use the libraries to display those, store them, and then that's a S3 bucket behind the scenes. And then front-end deployment, fully managed, so you just ship your front end. OK, so with all these launches, again, I'm going to frame them in this development lifecycle. So let's talk about some new features for developing first. Also, I have like 13 demos, so you'll see a lot of code in this one. The first announcement that I want to make is the biggest one. So we just announced the second generation of our back-end building capabilities. And this is available in preview. A lot of the other launches are going to be framed in this light, so I wanted to start with the big one instead of building up to it. And there's a lot of capabilities with this that are going to make the developer experience a lot better. And I've been working with it, and I do really think that the developer experience is awesome with Gen 2. So this developer preview allows you to build code first. So instead of using a CLI or a user interface, you write code, and then automatically it will provision those backend resources for you. And I'll show you a lot of what that looks like. You can see a little bit of the backend code and front-end code on here already, but we'll do a lot of videos as well. And this was all completely inspired by feedback from users like you all. So it really will help to address a lot of the feedback that we got with the previous versions of Amplify. So some of the features, it's first a TypeScript-first file-based approach. And with TypeScript, you get type safety and also a really great developer experience with IntelliSense in your text editor, so you can import things really easily. And it's also file-based. So in your code base, you will have a backend resources folder that has all of your Amplify code in it in files. So a really nice thing for developing is that there are these per developer cloud sandboxes. So as you're building, it'll automatically deploy all your changes on every single save in the cloud. You can iterate a lot faster in this way. And we've also unified deployment. So your backend and your front end can be deployed at once with any git push that you make. It also has a brand new, very beautiful console. I've been really enjoying just looking at it. It's purple now. And all of Gen 2 is built with AWS CDK. So extensibility is built in. You don't need to run anything extra in order to use the CDK, to use any of the AWS services that aren't default supported by Amplify. Okay, so I showed you that diagram before of how Amplify works. Well, front-end hosting stays the same. The UI libraries, UI components, Figma to code, all that stays the same. The part that changes is that the backend can now be done with code in this Gen 2 preview rather than via a CLI or Studio. Okay, let me show you a little bit of how this works. So I'm going to build out a Next.js app. I've been using Next.js to build everything recently. I've been using the flags instead of the different options that you can have. So building out a Next.js app. And once I'm there, I'm going to run the brand new Amplify create script. What this is going to do is generate a new Amplify project for you. I'm saying in my current directory, and that's how you build an Amplify app. Once I run that, I can open up my text editor, and you'll see that Amplify directory was created just like before with 2 directories within there, a resources.ts file for data and one for auth. These are the files that you'll be building all of your Amplify backend in. There's a lot of comments kind of teaching you how to build with it, which I really appreciate as an educator myself. Okay, so first, to build a backend schema, I want to build out a trivia app. So I'm going to make a question, and a model will make a TypeScript model for you. And as soon as this is deployed, it will be backed by a DynamoDB instance. So each one of my questions will have text, and in this case, the text is going to be string. The answers are also string and required, and an array field. So I can have multiple answers for each trivia question. Then the correct answer will also be a string. Then I can add authorization just chained onto here. So this a.allow owner is going to make it so that whoever created a question can update and delete it. I also will allow public for reading, so anybody can do the trivia, but only those who are signed in can create new questions. And just like that, I have my backend data defined for this application. So I have this question, and you can see the TypeScript. And as I was typing, you could see the TypeScript suggestions coming up as well. So IntelliSense was suggesting a.string comes next, or these are the different options that you can have for a field. Then the authorization modes down at the bottom. This was automatically generated by Amplify as well. And it has all the information about what I'm going to use for authorization. So in this case, the default's going to be API key. I could change this to user pool instead if I wanted. OK, let's do auth. So you can set up external providers with Amplify. I, for example, am going to do a verification email subject, verify your email. So this will be a custom email subject line. And I can do this just with one line of code. So whenever a new user signs up, they're going to get an email, and it's going to have this as the subject line. You can do different providers, like I said, multi-factor authentication, all those things in this format, which is pretty nice, I think. So the next part is per developer cloud sandboxes. So if you've ever worked with cloud resources before in development, if you make too many changes, you might clobber over another developer on your team. This prevents that issue. So every single person on my team, as we're developing an app together, is going to have their own cloud sandbox. And as you iterate, this sandbox is going to deploy resources for you. We did the math, and it's about 8 times faster than it was to deploy resources through the previous version of Amplify. So it's pretty fast to develop with this, and it's also isolated, so you're not going to step on any other developer's toes as you build. OK, so what this looks like is I am going to run the command npx amplify sandbox as I develop. This will be running in the background. You can see it kind of going. And then whenever I change anything in my code, so for example, I change my content format or add a done field to my to-do list. Our hello world in our docs right now is the to-do. So done, it's going to redeploy in my cloud sandbox. And this one took about 10 seconds, I believe, to redeploy my model in the cloud. The DynamoDB table is updated, and now I'll have 2 fields that I can store content and done. So this is the development experience that you'll have when using Amplify Gen 2's preview. And once you're ready to stop developing, you can shut down your sandbox, and it'll ask you if you want to tear down all the AWS resources that were created in that sandbox, which is really handy if you're like me and hit your S3 bucket limit like every day. It'll tear down all those resources for you when you shut down that sandbox. OK, so then the front end. The front end code looks something like this. I can build out the generate client function, and that will give me a typed client instance to interact with my data. So my questions, I can do await client.models.question.list, and that will give me a list of all of my questions back. And that's what the API looks like for interacting with my data on the client side. For my authentication, I'm going to use our with authenticator component. And it's a higher order React component, so I'll just wrap my create questions component in that. And whenever I want to, it's going to have a full user flow for me. I'll show you that in a second. OK, so that one line of code with authenticator gave me this authentication component with sign in and create account. This is fully themable, so it's like teal by default, not pink. I made it pink because, you know. I am going to add in my email, password, and then I'll need to confirm my password. And then in my email, you'll see the verify your email for trivia. I'll have a password code here. And then my form will be here. I, again, want users to be signed in before they create trivia questions. And I want to announce a couple other new things. First off, anybody else just like hate making forms? Because like I really do. One of my favorite new things that we've launched is this change password component. So very similarly to that with authenticator component, where you can add a full sign-in, sign-up flow and just like one line of code. You can do the same thing for changing passwords now, and that's the component that's generated by that. And there's also a delete user component. So if you want to have a delete user flow within your app, you can add that with just delete user in your app. OK. Speaking of not liking writing forms, I'm going to talk about form generation in this Amplify Gen 2. So what I'm going to do is whenever I want to build a form for any of my Amplify built data, I can do npx generate forms. That's going to create a directory for me that has a delete form, a create form, and an update form. All I need to do is add that question create form to my React code. And then it's going to build. And then once I'm in my app, it'll have this form for me with the text, the create answers, and then it will do the array field as well. So I can add multiple answers right here as well. So for anybody else that hates writing forms and styling forms, this will do all of that for you, which is a big help and a big time saver. So any Amplify data, Amplify generate forms, and it'll create that create form, update form, and delete form for you. Okay, so altogether, my trivia app looks something like this. Anybody know Amplify's age 2017? And then my score looks like this. So I can build that full stack trivia app with Amplify pretty quickly. Okay, I want to talk about JavaScript v6, and this is now generally available. You've seen some of this. I've been writing it in the client side of my code, but this is another recent launch, and I want to talk a little bit more about it. So first off, we've reduced all the bundle sizes for the JavaScript library, which was a big customer request of ours. There's also improved TypeScript support, since I know so many front-end developers are using TypeScript now. And Next.js. I feel like every new React app is using Next.js now, so we've really doubled down on making that experience really great. And also, there is custom OIDC. So if you wanted to connect to like Okta, for example, for authentication, you can do that now with Amplify as well. And you can see a little bit that the API has changed as well with this TypeScript support. So you can see like the IntelliSense is really working in this GIF here. Okay, so smaller bundle sizes, just how much have they reduced? So this is something that is really important for your end users as well, having a small bundle size so that your application is lightweight and fast. So we compared JSV5 versus JSV6, and this was the results. So data, for example, is 58% smaller. It went from 91 kilobytes to 38 kilobytes. They improved the tree shaking on this. So if you only want data, you can just load the data part of Amplify. Or if you just want auth, you can just have auth. Then for some other pieces, auth had a 42% reduction in bundle size. And analytics was 42%, notifications was 41%. So a big reduction in bundle sizes for Amplify with JSV6. Then with Next.js, there is now support for the app router, pages router, and middleware. So no matter how you're building your Next.js app, you can use Amplify's libraries with that. I know I have been playing a lot with the app router recently, and it makes that experience really nice as well. You can also use Amazon Code Whisperer to generate Amplify code. So you probably saw that as I was typing, but I'll show you again. So as I was building out my schema, you can see that it suggested a.model in Code Whisperer. So Code Whisperer has been trained with Amplify data, and it can help out with suggesting here as well. So I've been using that when I've been building new Amplify apps as well. It's been really speeding up the process. You can also use Amazon Q to answer Amplify questions as you're building as well. And I've also been trying this out for a while here. So one thing that I do is the explain functionality. So this is the text editor VS Code extension. And I will do the explain hotkey, and it will explain exactly what my lines of Amplify code are doing. So in this case, my data model, and it'll explain all the authorization rules and all that. So that saves a lot of Google time in my development process. Been pretty cool to see that as well. And one that's near and dear to my heart, we completely redid the Amplify docs site. So if you go to docs.amplify.aws, first off, it's rethemed, so it looks totally different. And it's been reorganized by use case instead of the different tooling categories. So build a backend, or how Amplify works, how to add authentication to your app. These different guides have been built out so that you can build end-to-end applications with Amplify using the examples on there. And the How Amplify Works guides have been added as well. I had that as a project myself this year, and those are pretty cool. They show you kind of an explanation of what Amplify is and what all the different pieces are. So I would definitely check that out if you are new to Amplify. And that exists both on the new doc site for Amplify Gen 2 and the old doc site for the Gen 1 of Amplify as well. So both have been redesigned and re-architected. Okay, we've talked a lot about what you can develop and how with Amplify. Now I want to move on to shipping. So full stack Git-based deploys. This is how Amplify Gen 2 works. So you'll have your Git repository with different branches as you build, and each one of your Git branches will correspond with a deployment environment if you want. So your Git repo will be your source of truth for your full application. Very similar to how front-end hosting has worked historically with Amplify, now that's full stack hosting. So, for example, if I have 4 people on my team, we could all be contributing to the same Git repository, have different branches, and then different deployments that correspond to those branches. And full stack CI/CD with that as well. And this is the default, but if you want to build your own deployment pipeline or use one that you've already built, you can do that now with Amplify Gen 2 as well. So let's look at what this experience looks like. So I've got a full stack Amplify app in a GitHub repo. I'm going to create a new deployment instance, link to a GitHub repo, authorize Amplify to do that, choose the branch that I want to deploy, in this case mean, but it could be any branch. It'll automatically detect that I was using Next.js. And then after the deployment time runs, I'm going to have this interface and my trivia app will be live. So again, I love the purple. I think it's really fun. Once I'm in there, there's this unified management console so I can see my deployed resources. So like any of the Cognito user pools, DynamoDB, all that will be listed there. And then you can manage the data that's coming soon, the UI library, and all those things are directly within the console there. So it's all in one place, your front end and your back end deployment. In addition, we've added a unified flow for secrets management. So in your front-end code base, or your back-end code, your Amplify code base, you can use the secret function to connect to any of your secrets. So for example, this is using Facebook authentication. You would need a client ID and a client secret for that, and you can store those within the new secrets flow. And you can add those directly within the console, and behind the scenes, they will add it to secret storage. And then on your in your app code, you can just use that secrets function. So that speeds up that process for sure. Again, you can add custom pipelines. There's mono repo support, but you could use GitHub Actions or AWS Code Pipelines or Amazon Code Catalyst to deploy your full stack apps across regions or across AWS accounts. And this allows you to set up trunk-based deploys. That's something that customers have been asking for. So you can use Amplify's default setup, really quickly and easily, or you can set up your own custom pipeline if you want instead. And again, this works for mono repos as well if that's how you have your app set up. What you can do is just disconnect the branch and then add your own custom pipeline there. I can. Then another announcement that I am so excited about, this is a huge one that folks have been asking for, is you can now host any server-side rendered app with AWS Amplify, not just Next.js apps. So what we've done is we've built out a deployment spec that a hosting provider a framework or you individually as customers can build out that spec according to that spec and then deploy any app using it. So there's a spec for static assets, compute, image optimization, and routing rules. So again, not just limited to Next.js for hosting SSR apps anymore. And Next has already launched Amplify support. So if you use the latest version of Next today, you will be able to deploy to Amplify really quickly and easily. They have this Amplify adapter built in. So here's what it looks like to deploy a Next app with Amplify hosting. So this is just the Amplify hosting landing page. This is information about the build spec and the configuring build settings for Next apps. And this is the Next documentation that tells you about this process as well. So you can go to either resource to learn about these things. Then we're going to build out just a Hello World Next app with an event handler here with SSR. Then this is the AWS console. We'll go in and host a new app. We'll choose GitHub. We'll push our project to GitHub. Choose your branch, your build settings. This is the old console. You could also do it with the new console experience as well. It's up to you. But then you can save and deploy. And your Next app will ship as soon as the deployment process finishes. So I know that that was an issue with a ton of upvotes that we had in our GitHub. And so really, really excited to be able to provide Next support for the Vue developers out there. Another feature that I'm really excited about is wildcard subdomains. And this helps with building out SaaS apps and custom domains for your Amplify app. So here's a demo of this. So you have an app deployed with Amplify hosting. Then you can go to domain management, manage subdomains, and you can have the star here, and that will allow you to have any subdomain within a domain. So for example, if you had like a profile app, one of my coworkers did this, which is why it's his Twitter account. But this app has auth and middleware set up with Next.js. So you can see that he's written some Next.js code here. And the parameter will be the user string, so whatever the user's username is. So whenever you go to users code beast, you'll see this like user profile page. And it's going to, he wrote the code so that it will redirect to a subdomain instead. So now you can see that it goes to the subdomain codebeast. amplifyapp.com or whatever. So again, within the console, when you build apps out and host them, you can add in that wildcard subdomain and then build out these SaaS-type apps where different subdomains lead to different pages. So you don't need to specify those subdomains up front. I've done this a lot for customers in my software engineering career, so I know that this is probably something that will appeal to a lot of folks. Also, I talked about this for Gen 2, but Gen 1 also supports monorepos now for hosting. So as you host your web apps using Yarn workspaces, PMPM, TurboRepo, and NX, you can now use Amplify hosting to deploy those as well. Okay, the last part, scaling. So now you've got your app developed and shipped. What else can you do with it if you find that you need more AWS than just Amplify provides? So a big thing is that Amplify Gen 2 is now completely built on top of AWS CDK, or Cloud Development Kit. So in fact, the data and auth capabilities wrap CDK L3 constructs. So you can use those L3 constructs directly, and in fact, we recommend if you're building a brand new Amplify app today, before Gen 2 goes into GA, that you use those data and auth constructs. And so extending to use any service using CDK requires no extra code. So this example here is for Amazon Location Service. This is what that would look like to use Amazon Location Service with CDK. And one I have been using a lot in my code is Amazon Bedrock. I'm sure a lot of you have been as well. But I wanted to build out a chat app that would recommend conferences for my developer advocates to speak at. And what you can see is that I have a resolver here, which is a Lambda function under the hood. And I will be able to say, like, I want recommendations for this conference. It has some more information on that request. And then on the other side is the CDK code that I need to connect to Bedrock right there. And then I can call that directly within my GraphQL code or my TypeScript code that defines my backend. So I have been finding this really, really handy. When you're building out GenAI apps, you need more than the GenAI. You usually need a front-end layer too. I've been finding Amplify does a really good job of making it so that you can build out these sandboxes, like building out the chat prompt with the UI components, and all of those things has been a really nice experience with Amplify. Also, the new L3 data construct supports Postgres and MySQL. I know Postgres is one of the databases that is nearest and dearest to my heart, and I'm very excited to say that Amplify L3 constructs with CDK, you can now use Postgres or MySQL databases. You take an existing one, and then you store the credentials in Systems Manager, and then you can build out a GraphQL API to interact with them. And that looks something like this. So you can see the SQL query within there, like for listing meals, select star for meals where name is like something, and then add your auth rules or authorization rules right there as well. So that's another launch that I'm really excited about. And I'm really excited about the future of Amplify with SQL databases as well. Thank you all so much for coming. And again, I'll hang out and answer any more questions that you have one-on-one after.